Hi, and welcome to a special episode of Unfiltered Wrestling Podcast. We're going to talk about NXT's Homecoming show, and WWE has spent quite a lot of time trying to promote this. So Triple H came out to start of the ring, like he does on these big events, and built it up. Started getting the crowd into a bit of a frenzy. And we need to remember that the Full Sail campus was where NXT started. It's where they started to move forward and progress to some of the big superstars that they had. Now, Triple H mentioned the past and mentioned the role that NXT has had on the current stars of WWE and what the future may hold. This led to Shawn Michaels coming out and Shawn and Triple H having a bit of a comical laugh, but almost like a little bit of a heated moment when Triple H said, well, what if I wanted to come back? At which point William Regal comes out, asks them to stop bickering, and says the names War Games. Again, any NXT fan knows this is the way in which you start William Regal promos, especially around Survivor Series. The tag team champions Alexa and Charlotte then came out and then praised a lot of the female wrestling superstars that have come from NXT. Charlotte mentioned the Four Horsemen, and whilst that didn't necessarily say Sasha Banks, she certainly implied that she was part of that. Paige's name was mentioned, and as we are aware, she is a free agent at the moment, doing her own thing, so maybe there's a nod to a possible future. Alexa Bliss mentioned a lot of the other guys, including Ember Moon, which a lot of throwaway guys, and Shayna Baszler, we'll come to her in a minute. This was a really good throwback, and it gave NXT a chance to remember. And what both Alexa and Charlotte said is the women's division is the backbone of NXT. It's very difficult to disagree with that when you look at the women wrestlers on the main brands at the moment. Most of them have come through NXT, and most have earned their stripes as a result of this. We should not forget that NXT has brought us so many good stars. After this, we had the tag match. Izzy Dane and Taylor Paxton coming through. This was a good, solid match. Unfortunately, the main event guys were there showing a lot of what they had. Although Izzy Dane at times looked quite powerful, and Charlotte gave her quite a lot. But the problem was, it wasn't enough. And the Cullen, even if they were involved, couldn't stop Alexa hitting her sister Abigail for the victory. Now, both awards need to go to both Taylor Paxton and Izzy Dawn for the fact that they looked like they can match them. And these two women have a bright future if they can manage themselves appropriately. And whilst we talk about Shayna Baszler, she appeared backstage. And this is the first time I've heard of her appearing since she was released by WWE. So, does her appearance mean that there's a future for her somewhere along the lines? We're not sure. But she was speaking to a couple of the wrestlers, trying to G them up. And she looked great. She looked in as good a shape as she was when she was originally on NXT. This led to the Trick Mello gang taking on DIY. And Ciampa and Gargano both came out with their original musics in almost their original gear. They looked really good. And this tag match was quite a lot of fun. There was a lot of going forwards. Ciampa got some great moves in. Project Ciampa, Fairy Tale Ending. DIY hit a Shatter Machine and a Meet in the Middle. However, this wasn't enough as Miz came down and interfered in the match, costing DIY. Mello hit the nothing but net leg drop from the top to score the victory. This wasn't enough for Trick Williams, who at times looked like he was going to attack Mello. Sami Zayn then tried to promote Javon Evans when Josh Briggs got involved and there was a bit of an altercation. It appears Javon Evans is going to get a push, and I think this is right. he's about ready for one of those North American title runs, I would say. He's there just about, maybe a little bit longer, but he's going to be a star in the making. This led us on to North American Championship between Tyler Breeze and All Ego Ethan Page. Now, Tyler Breeze again has been released by NXT a little while ago, but he appears to have absolutely nailed everything. He looked great in this match. There wasn't a lot of ring rust, I would say, and Ethan Page is always a great hand to have in the ring. Breeze hit a figure 4 around the ring post, which was a great callback, and then hit a scissors leg drop into a single Boston Crab, which looked great. But as a result, Ethan Page managed to get the twisted grin for the victory. This could build up far better, and I hope Tyler Breeze has some sort of story if they're going to bring him back. Just don't want this to be one of those really strange moments. Then came to probably the most controversial part of the evening. The Grayson Waller effect led to Ricky Saints and Obafemi coming out to talk. Whilst there was a little bit of hinted backwards and forwards, it's when Trick Williams came out and accused Ricky Saints of jumping ahead of him in the queue. He said that he and Obafemi had, quote unquote, unfinished business. This is strange. Trick is quite clearly linked with TNA's world title. Surely we move him over to the side. But that's not what happened. What was ended up being announced by Grayson Waller is that we would have an NXT champion, Obafemi, versus TNA champion, Trick Williams, for both titles next week on NXT. This is huge and absolutely massive. It's difficult to see who we pin this on. If I was to pick off the top of my head right now, and I know there's going to be a winner, which I don't think there's going to be a case, I think Trick Williams takes back both belts. But it was announced for the rest of the show that TNA stars were unhappy, so I think we need to see how TNA ends up. This was followed by Robert Roode, or Bobby Roode, the glorious one, and somebody mentioned Joe Hendry's name, and he shall appear. And it's worth mentioning they had a good interactions. There's a good chance that Joe Hendry will probably go towards the NXT title. It appears he's almost certainly full-time now with the WWE. So let's see how that one goes. If it's not official, it's almost certainly going to be. This was then followed out by Alexi King's promo. And he slated Miles Boone for coming out and hitting him with a chair. This led to him announcing a lights out match for next week. Ironically enough though, there was one Legends music that hit, and it hit in old style that sent the crowd wild. Finn Balor returned to NXT and he got a great ovation. Everybody loved him and he looked great. But Miles Boone then came round and hit Lexi King and knocked him out, enabling Finn Balor to hit the coup de grace. Now my only worry with this is, whilst Finn deserves his flowers, was a great champion in NXT, he's also a heel. And he was put over as like a babyface. So what kind of impact is this? Is this going to impact Raw later down the line? I don't know. It's a strange point on where we go. But it is certainly interesting. The main event had Fatal Attraction versus Stephanie Vicaire, Rhea Ripley, and the replacement, Lyra Valkyria. So it turns out Tiffany Stratton, who was meant to be in this match, actually suffered a concussion on SmackDown, and this is the reason she was taken out of the match. It didn't hurt too much. Bearing in mind Lyra and Stephanie had both had a match on Raw. They led into the story that they were both injured a little, not a great deal, and JCJ just kept cutting off Rhea wherever she could. Now to start with, the Raw stars were powering everybody through, and at first I thought this made Fatal Influence quite weak. However, they started to build up and a special slingshot into a Pele kick looked great. Everybody seemed to be looking like they were taking some attacks, and both Lyra and Stephanie looked like they'd taken lumps from this. However, a double devil's kiss from Stephanie and Rhea sent the crowd and Booker T wild. What then ended up happening is Lola Vice came out as Jessie J attempts to run away from the match. This is really weird. Jessie J is supposed to be a champion, and Lola Vice isn't somebody I would expect to beat her for the belt. But again, you never know. What happened was this then led to Rhea hitting a riptide on Jessie J. Now my only worry is your NXT Women's Champion has just been pinned. Now it's by Rhea Ripley, which isn't a bad thing, but is certainly something that could worry us in the long term if WWE does not want to bury NXT. And that's where the credits started rolling and we all started feeling, yeah, this is a good end of match. And the final scene we saw was Obafemi with his title on one shoulder and Trick Williams holding his belt on the other side. As Ava said, yeah, TNA aren't happy with this. I think we need to keep our eyes on TNA and see how it goes. I've been Tim, and you've been watching the Unfiltered Wrestling Podcast coverage of NXT Homecoming. If you'd like us to cover more on NXT, please leave a comment down below and like our videos, because we know you love them as well. That's us all done now. See you later.